Some moments in life leave a scar so deep that no time can erase them. That night was one of them. The man who once vowed to love and protect me had already shattered my trust, turning my world into a nightmare. But betrayal wasn't enough. He wanted to break me completely. Suddenly, he grabbed my hair and yanked it so hard that I gasped in pain. Then, he slapped me with such force that I collapsed onto the floor, my pregnant body hitting the ground with a painful thud. What happened next was beyond anything I could have ever imagined. Hello, my name is Alina Carter, and I am 28 years old. If you had told me a few years ago that my life would turn into a nightmare before transforming into something greater than I ever imagined, I would have laughed. But life has a way of showing us the truth in the most brutal ways. I was once a woman who believed in love, in promises, and in forever. I was once a woman who thought that marriage was built on trust and devotion. But I was wrong, so terribly wrong. I met Damian Wells when I was 23 years old, in a city that I had dreamed of building my future in, Everwood. At that time, I was just an ordinary fashion designer, working at a small boutique, hoping to one day launch my own brand. Damian, on the other hand, was nothing like me. He was rich, confident, and dangerously charming. From the moment he walked into that boutique, flashing that irresistible smile, I was drawn to him like a moth to a flame. "Are you the one who designed this?" he had asked, holding up a sleek black dress. I nodded shyly. Yes, I did. "It's stunning," he said, looking directly into my eyes. "Just like you." And just like that, he swept me off my feet. For months, he showered me with attention, expensive dinners, and whispered sweet promises about our future together. He made me feel special, chosen, loved. When he proposed, I didn't even hesitate. I said yes, believing that I had found the man of my dreams. But dreams can turn into nightmares faster than you think. The first time I met Margaret Wells, Damian's mother, I realized that I was nothing but an outsider in their world. She was the head of Wells Global Enterprises, a luxury real estate empire, and she made it clear that I wasn't good enough for her son. At a grand party hosted at the Wells Mansion, I walked in wearing the best dress I could afford, hoping to make a good impression. But when Margaret looked at me, her cold eyes scanned me from head to toe like I was a stain on her perfect world. "You're the designer my son has been so obsessed with," she said, swirling her wine glass with a fake smile. How unexpected. Damian squeezed my hand reassuringly, but deep down, I knew I was not welcome. And from that night onward, everything started to change. Damian, the man who once adored me, slowly began to pull away. He spent more time at work, more time at his mother's estate, and less time with me. By the time I was 7 months pregnant, our apartment was filled with silence and tension. The man who used to hold me close at night now barely even looked at me. And then, on one fateful night, he shattered my world completely. I still remember that night like a scar burned into my soul. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. I sat on the couch, rubbing my swollen belly, trying to ignore the sharp ache in my back. 7 months pregnant with Damian's twins, I should have been happy, excited for the future. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Damian had been avoiding me for weeks, barely speaking to me, coming home late, and when he did, he smelled like expensive cologne that wasn't his own. My gut told me what my heart refused to accept. Then, that night, it finally happened. Damian walked into the apartment, his face cold, his eyes empty. He didn't greet me, didn't even look at me properly. Instead, he stood in the doorway, his hands clenched into fists, as if preparing for battle. "I can't do this anymore, Alina." My heart stopped. I felt my breath catch in my throat. What do you mean?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. "I mean I'm done. With you. With this, with everything." The words sliced through me like a blade. "You're leaving me?" My voice cracked. Damian finally looked at me then, and for the first time, I saw the truth. The man I had loved was gone. "My mother was right," he said, his tone cold and detached. "You don't belong in my world." I should have listened to her from the start. I felt as if the floor had vanished beneath me. I placed a hand on my belly, feeling a protective instinct surge within me. Damien, please, we're about to have children together. This isn't just about us anymore. He let out a bitter laugh. That's exactly the problem. I never wanted this, Alina. I don't want you, and I sure as hell don't want to be a father. The room spun. My body felt weak, but I refused to break. So, this is what it's about? I whispered. You're choosing money over us? Your mother's approval over your own children. Damien's face twisted with frustration. You don't get it. If I stay with you, I lose everything. The money, the business, my future. And for what? A life I never wanted. Tears blurred my vision. The man standing before me was a stranger, a coward who had chosen greed over love. I should have stayed silent, should have let him walk away. But my pain turned to rage. You are a pathetic excuse for a man, I spat, my voice shaking. You're nothing without your mother's money. Without me. And one day, you'll realize that you lost the only people who truly mattered. That's when it happened. Damien's jaw tightened, his eyes darkened, and in an instant, his hand shot out, a sharp, brutal slap across my face. I gasped as pain exploded across my cheek, my head snapping to the side. My vision blurred with shock and tears, but before I could react, he grabbed a fistful of my hair and yanked it hard, forcing me to look at him. You don't get to talk to me like that, he snarled, his face inches from mine. You're nothing without me, Alina. Nothing. I winced as my scalp burned, my heart pounding against my ribcage. My body trembled, but not out of fear, out of fury. I looked straight into his eyes, refusing to let him see me break. No, Damien, I said, my voice dangerously calm despite the tears in my eyes. I am everything without you, and one day you'll beg for my forgiveness. He scoffed, shoving me away like I was worthless. Don't count on it. Then, without another word, he walked out of the door, leaving me alone, pregnant, broken, and abandoned. I touched my burning cheek, breathing heavily, shaking, but inside me, something changed. I knew I would never let Damien or his mother win. One day, I would rise from the ashes, and when that day came, I would take everything from him, just like he took everything from me. The night Damien walked out of my life, I felt like I had died. For hours, I sat on the cold floor, my hand still pressed to my stinging cheek, my hair tangled from where he had yanked it. I was shaking, not just from pain, but from anger, humiliation, and heartbreak. I wanted to scream, to break something, to cry until I had no tears left. But then, a small movement in my belly reminded me, I wasn't alone. My babies were still inside me, still depending on me. And that's when the realization hit me like a wave of fire. Damien had left me, believing I would crumble. He had chosen his mother's wealth over our family, convinced that without his money, his name, and his power, I would be nothing. But he was wrong. I wasn't going to disappear. I was going to rise. The next few months were the hardest of my life. With no financial support, no husband, and no family to rely on, I was completely on my own. Damien's mother, Margaret Wells, made sure that I had nothing. She pulled strings to get me evicted from the apartment we had shared. She froze all joint accounts, ensuring that I couldn't even withdraw a single dollar. I was homeless, 7 months pregnant, and completely alone. I knocked on doors, begged for help, but no one wanted to get involved. Damien's family had too much power, too much influence. If anyone helped me, they would face the Wells' wrath. I'm sorry, Alina, but I can't risk my business for this. I wish I could help, but I can't afford to lose my job. Maybe you should just go back and beg Damien. He's the father after all. I refused. I would rather starve on the streets than crawl back to the man who had destroyed me. So I did what I had to do. I took whatever jobs I could find, cleaning shifts at motels, working as a night shift waitress at a rundown diner, stitching clothes for local tailors. My feet swelled, my back ached, but I didn't stop. I barely slept, barely ate. But every single dollar I earned, I saved. I knew that one day, I would need it. When the time finally came, I gave birth in a cheap, overcrowded hospital alone. No husband to hold my hand. No family waiting outside. Just me. It was the most excruciating pain I had ever felt, but when I heard their first cries, a boy and a girl, the pain disappeared. I held them close, breathing in their warmth. They were so small, so fragile. "I will never let anyone hurt you," I whispered to them, tears slipping down my face. I named them Luca and Ivy, names that belonged to no one but them. No connection to Damien. No part of his legacy. I refused to list Damien's name on the birth certificates. As far as I was concerned, he was already dead to us. But deep down, I knew the truth. One day, he would regret everything. One day, he would realize that he had walked away from the only thing that ever truly mattered. But by then, it would be too late. I didn't just want to survive. I wanted to win. Damien and Margaret thought they had destroyed me, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. I would become more successful than Damien ever imagined. I would build something greater than his family's empire. And when the time was right, I would take everything from him. But I knew I couldn't do it overnight. I needed time. I needed a plan. And that's when I realized I had one skill Damien's family had never taken seriously: fashion. I had spent years designing dresses, working in boutiques, dreaming of having my own label. But I had always been too scared to chase that dream. Not anymore. If people won't give me a chance, I'll take it myself. At night, when the twins were asleep, I sketched. I cut fabric. I stitched by hand. I poured every ounce of my pain, anger, and determination into my work. Then one day, an idea struck me. A high-profile charity gala was coming up, one hosted by some of the richest families in the city, including the Wells family. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't just going to attend that gala. I was going to make sure every single person there remembered my name. And that night would be the first step toward my revenge. I had nothing. No status. No connections. No invitations. But I had talent. And I had a plan. The Wells family was hosting one of the most prestigious charity galas of the year. It was an event where the rich and powerful came to flaunt their wealth, wearing designer dresses, sipping on overpriced champagne, and pretending to care about charity. Margaret Wells would be there. Damien would be there. And so would I. Not as a guest. As a storm waiting to hit. I spent every waking moment designing, sewing, and perfecting the dress that would change my fate. A dress so breathtaking, so unique, that no one would dare ignore me. It was deep crimson, a shade that screamed confidence and danger. The fabric hugged the body like a second skin, flowing down in layers so smooth it looked like liquid fire. The open-back design revealed just enough to be bold yet elegant, while a delicate silver thread wove across the fabric like lightning streaking through a stormy sky. "If they won't give me a seat at their table," I muttered, running my fingers over the final stitches, "then I'll burn the whole damn table down." The night of the gala, I arrived without an invitation. No one noticed me at first. I was just another woman stepping out of a cab, my heels clicking against the marble pavement as I made my way up the grand staircase. But then they saw the dress. The moment I stepped inside, heads turned. Women gasped, men stared, and whispers spread through the crowd like wildfire. "Who is she? That dress, it's stunning. I've never seen anything like it before." I walked with purpose, my chin held high, pretending like I belonged there. Because tonight I did. And then, my eyes locked onto Margaret and Damien Wells. They were at the center of the room, surrounded by their elite circle. Margaret, as always, looked composed, sipping her wine like a queen overlooking her kingdom. Damien stood beside her, looking as polished and powerful as ever. But when his gaze met mine, he froze. For the first time since he had left me broken and pregnant, Damien Wells looked at me and saw something he never expected. I wasn't the helpless woman he had abandoned. I was fire. I was power. I was his biggest mistake. Damien's mouth parted slightly, shock flickering in his eyes. I smiled. A slow, knowing smile. He took a step forward, as if needing to confirm that I was real. "Alina?" His voice was barely above a whisper. Margaret followed his gaze, her usual expression of arrogance fading into something unreadable. She studied me, her eyes narrowing as if she were piecing together a puzzle she hadn't realized was missing. "You shouldn't be here," Margaret finally said, her voice as sharp as glass. I took a sip of the champagne I had just lifted from a passing waiter's tray, savoring the moment. "Oh, but I should," I replied smoothly. "You see, Margaret, I belong here more than you know." Margaret's lips pressed into a thin line. "You're a nobody." I laughed softly. "Not for long." And that was the truth. Because this night wasn't about revenge, yet. This night was about making sure the world knew my name. Before Margaret or Damien could say another word, a woman approached me, a socialite with connections in the fashion industry. "Darling, that dress is exquisite. Who designed it?" I smiled. "I did." She gasped. "You're a designer? Do you have a label?" "Not yet," I said, sipping my champagne. "But I will soon." And just like that, the first step of my plan was in motion. Margaret and Damien could only watch as I was pulled into conversation after conversation, as people begged to know where they could buy my designs. That night, I left the gala with more than just attention. I left with my first real opportunity. And as I walked past Damien one last time, I leaned in just enough to whisper, "This is only the beginning." Then, without looking back, I disappeared into the night, leaving him standing there, watching me go, just like he had once done to me. Only this time, I was the one holding all the power. The night of the gala had changed everything. I wasn't just the ex-wife Damien abandoned anymore. I was a name people wanted to know. By the next morning, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Designers, journalists, and socialites were all asking the same thing. "Who is Alina Carter?" And I made sure they got their answer. With the money I had saved from working endless shifts and the contacts I made at the gala, I took my biggest risk yet. I launched my own fashion brand, Carter Noir. It started as a small online boutique, showcasing a handful of exclusive, handcrafted designs, each dress carrying the same bold, striking elegance as the one I had worn that night. A dress should not just be worn, it should make the wearer unforgettable. That was my motto. And within just 6 months, Carter Noir went viral. Hollywood stylists started reaching out, models wanted to wear my pieces, and luxury magazines began featuring my work. Suddenly, I was no longer just a fashion designer. I was a threat. While I was rising, Damien was falling. Wells Global Enterprises, once an untouchable empire, was bleeding money, bad investments, a failing economy, and worst of all, Margaret's iron-fisted control was suffocating the company. I kept my eye on the news, watching as Damien and his mother struggled to keep their business afloat. Wells Global is facing severe financial losses. Investors are pulling out due to poor management. The once mighty real estate empire is now on the brink of collapse. Every headline made me smile. But I wasn't done yet. I didn't just want to watch Damien suffer. I wanted to be the reason he lost everything. So I made my move. I used silent investors, people who believed in my vision, to start buying shares in Wells Global. Little by little, I took control, ensuring that my name never appeared in the records. Until the day came when I owned the majority shares. And that's when I received the official invitation to the Wells Global board meeting. The very company that threw me away was now in my hands. And it was time for Damien and Margaret to find out the hard way. I arrived at Wells Global's headquarters in a black power suit, my heels clicking against the marble floors. Executives, shareholders, and board members filled the massive conference room, murmuring about the company's downfall. At the head of the table sat Margaret, her usual cold confidence beginning to crack. Beside her was Damien, the man who once thought I was beneath him. But today, I was above them all. I walked in, every eye in the room turning toward me, and then I placed a folder on the table. As of today, I own the majority shares in Wells Global Enterprises. Silence. Damien's face went pale. Margaret's lips parted slightly in disbelief. "No, this is a mistake," she said, flipping through the documents with shaking hands. This isn't possible. I leaned in slightly, my voice calm but sharp. The mistake was underestimating me, Margaret. Damien finally spoke, his voice strained. Alina, you did all of this? I met his gaze, and for the first time in years, I felt nothing for him. No pain, no regret, no love, only satisfaction. I built something from nothing, Damien. While you were busy protecting your mother's empire, I was creating my own. His hands clenched into fists. You can't do this. I smirked. I already did. And then I delivered the final blow. As the new majority shareholder, my first official act is to remove both you and Margaret from your positions. Damien shot up from his chair, rage flashing in his eyes. You can't just...
Slap.
My palm connected with his cheek so hard that the sound echoed in the silent boardroom. Damien staggered back, his face burning red from both the impact and the humiliation. Before he could recover, I grabbed his collar, yanked him closer, and whispered so only he could hear. This is for the night you hit me, for the night you pulled my hair and left me to suffer alone. I let him go, watching as he struggled to process what had just happened. Then, I turned to Margaret. She looked at me with pure hatred, but there was something else in her eyes, too.
Fear.
Because she knew. I had taken everything from them, and there was nothing she could do to stop me. Without another word, I turned on my heel and walked out of the boardroom, leaving Damien and Margaret in the ruins of the empire they had once ruled. That night, when I arrived home, Luca and Ivy ran into my arms. "Mommy, did you win?" Ivy asked, looking up at me with bright, innocent eyes. I smiled, brushing her soft curls back. "Yes, sweetheart," I whispered. "I won." Because revenge wasn't about ruining Damien's life. It was about building one so powerful, so successful, that he no longer had the ability to define me. I had risen, and I had done it without him. Thank you for being a part of this journey. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe for more engaging content. Your support means the world, and there's so much more to come. Stay tuned for the next exciting story.